Good morning, everybody. Jim Feist in Las Vegas and Joe Mack in New York. Joe, good morning.
Good morning, Jim.
How are you? How was your weekend?
It was a great weekend. It was a great way to get started. Really cleaned up, as it turned out. Wound up winning a couple of big NFL games with the Packers, which were pretty easy. They were taking the point spread went down to 1.5, but we didn't need it. They wound up winning easy over the Vikings. And won with the Rams, got maybe a little help with that offensive pass interference call, but we wound up winning with the Rams Sunday night, and last night we cashed in under in the Tennessee-Denver game, the back half of the Monday night doubleheader. So big weekend to get started in the NFL, and we're certainly looking forward to a lot of big weekends the rest of the year at VegasMasters.com.
Yeah, your games are posted there all the time, VegasMasters.com. Everybody should go visit that and check it out. Now, we got this week to look forward to. We got a lot of first impressions, and sometimes what happens is we overreact to what we saw. So let's talk a little bit about that. On Thursday night, we have Cincinnati against Cleveland. What did you think of these two teams last week?
Well, unfortunately, the Browns kind of played to their reputation. A lot of people were hopeful, just as they were last year. The hype was a little less this year going into this Week 1 game, but they were awful against the Ravens. Couldn't contain Lamar Jackson, which we know a lot of teams are not going to be able to do that this year. But the Browns really looked bad and not a good start for their latest new coach, Kevin Stefanski. Meanwhile, the Bengals, I tell you, there's a lot to be feeling good about. In fact, there were a couple of teams in the NFL who had young quarterbacks whose teams lost their games, but they've got things to look forward to. And Joe Burrow is going to be a star in this league. I really believe that. I know the Bengals have been a ragtag organization now for a couple of decades. I mean, I can't remember the last time they won a playoff game, but this guy, the arrow is going to be pointing up on this franchise. He's got some moxie, and he's got some skill that a lot of these young quarterbacks have, which is he can run. He can make things happen with his legs. We saw the 23-yard touchdown, but he did that at LSU. One of the announcers pointed that out in the game on Sunday. He said that was an overlooked part of his game in college. It certainly was. I remember many times where LSU had to convert 3rd and 5, 3rd and 6 against Alabama and Auburn in games last year, and lots of times he got it done with his legs. I think the Bengals are going to be, like I said, the arrow is pointing up for him and for that team. I wouldn't be surprised if the Bengals are a real pain in the neck. I mean, it's a terrible way for them not to force overtime the other day. The kicker, Bullock, cramped up as he was kicking. I mean, it almost looked like one of those old NFL Follies highlights where, he just didn't get the kickoff. But overall, the Bengals have lots to be hopeful for. The Browns, not so much.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the Browns. They got a new coach. They have a lot of talent. Their roster, a lot of people say their roster is as good as anybody in a lot of positions. But the one position that I am not very high on, I was not very high on him last year or even the year before. Third year, Baker Mayfield looks like a bust to me.
I'm not ready yet to call him a bust in the pros, but he's heading towards being a bust. His numbers the other day, totally pedestrian numbers, 21 completions, 189 yards passing, 1 interception, 1 touchdown. He's not a difference-maker type guy. Now, he came into the league a couple of years ago, came off the bench, if you remember, on a Thursday night game, and played very well and showed a lot of poise in beating the Jets. So that was 2 Septembers ago. He has certainly regressed since then. And you don't even like the body language with him a lot. I mean, he just doesn't seem to play with that kind of swagger that he had at Oklahoma, which was a little bit over-the-top swagger. But he just doesn't seem to have it. Now, again, you're going to get his apologists out there saying, well, he's got another new offensive system. He's been on the team for 3 years, and this is his 3rd head coach. It's all true. It can't be helping any young quarterback. But it's starting to look like and I'm not tooting my horn because there were a lot of people that were surprised that he was the first draft pick 3 years ago. He didn't seem like he deserved it over a few of the other guys in that draft. And right now, he's a disappointment. Like I said, the Browns, to me, are not going to be any kind of impact team this year. They're over-under numbers around 8, I believe, or so. I mean, to me, they're looking at a 6-10 year. I thought that before the season started. I don't think they're going to. I mean, you look at the division they're in. We saw the Steelers last night. Okay, they gave up a couple of long drives, but that Steelers defense is tough with Dupree on one end and Watt on the other. They're going to give Baker Mayfield, fits in the 2 matchups this year. I don't see the Browns winning those divisional games. And like you said, we've got them playing the Bengals Thursday night. Let's say, for argument's sake, Mayfield and the Browns split their season series with the Bengals. I mean, you're looking at a likely 1-5 record within the AFC North. Not good. Just so many things really not to like right now. I know it's just 1 week, but we've had a couple of years to examine Mayfield. And like I said, I mean, he gets too many balls tipped and deflected. His decision-making, along with a lot of quarterbacks this past weekend, was not great. And they should be a little worried. And I'll tell you one thing, and I don't mean to necessarily just pick on Odell Beckham, but I saw him for a handful of years here in New York, watch a lot of the Giant games. He's forever leaving the game to get IVs and whatever fluids pumped into him. I mean, does this guy ever show up to start the season in shape? Every September he goes through this. Now, he's had preseasons in the past, and obviously we know the NFL had no preseason games. Every single September game, he winds up in a locker room for 10, 12 minutes at a time when his team needs him, and he's busy getting IVs. I mean, is it from not being in shape? Does he have some kind of problem? I don't know, but I mean, you wind up looking at the stats from the other day, and I mean, Beckham wound up with 3 catches for 22 yards. I mean, that's terrible. They targeted him 10 times. But part of it is his own problem. He's not getting enough separation, and so he, in some ways, is helping to drag down Baker Mayfield. But the Browns have some issues, and to me, they're a 6-10 team, and they're going to have their hands full with the Bengals Thursday night.
Well, we're going to probably have to move on because we'll never cover the whole card. But one thing about it's amazing how many divas there are at wide receiver in the NFL. It seems to be a position that attracts divas. But anyway, Baker's a little short, and I think he has trouble seeing over the line. And I like their team, but I don't think they're going to go anywhere with Baker. I'd like to actually see them switch to their backup. They have a decent backup, and that's what I would go with them. And I think you'll probably see that sometime in the next 6 weeks. The Rams go to the Eagles. The Rams coming off that victory over Dallas. The Eagles got unbelievably beat by the Washington football team, who looked actually pretty good. Now, Washington football team has a hell of a defensive line that sacked Wentz 8 times in that game and rushed him a lot. And now the Rams defense is kind of marginal. I mean, they have a couple players that show up a lot. Darnold won, but West Coast to East Coast, coming off a loss with the Eagles. Now the Rams are a 1.5-point favorite on the road.
Yeah, the Eagles got really banged up. It's funny you said that, and you're exactly right. The Washington football team, their defensive line, they've been building it up through the draft the last 3, 4, 5 years, and it's paying dividends. Meanwhile, the Eagles' defensive line and front 7 guys really got banged up. I mean, they might be short 3 starters from the Week 1 depth chart heading into this game, and I think that's a big reason why the number has reversed here, and now the Rams are a tiny road favorite. I liked a lot of things I saw about the Rams the other night. They played with tempo. That was a word that Al Michaels, the NBC announcer, mentioned that the coach McVay had talked about. They've got to play with tempo. I don't think they got enough points out of their long drives. It was a lot of dink and dunk, but they were getting first downs, and they had the ball, it seemed like, the whole first half against the Cowboys. But I think the Rams are going to have a pretty good bounce-back year. I thought their over-under number was a little low. I think they're a double-digit win team this year if they play to their capabilities. And true, they're traveling across the country here and now playing an Eagle team that, blew a 17-0 lead, just a terrible divisional loss to start out. But Philly's got some real worries. Obviously, the health issues that I'm talking about are some worries, and they didn't run the ball. I mean, they had a chance to run the ball. I know Coach Peterson for the Eagles, he's a Andy Reid disciple, likes to throw the ball more. He'd probably prefer to have a 60-40 pass-run ratio. But, I mean, I'm looking at the stats from the other day, and they wound up really 17 carries and barely cracked 50 yards. They've got some concerns there, and they've got some concerns on their offensive line too. That's not quite as physical and not quite as grizzled as in the past. So the Eagles are a team to keep your eye on. They could, they've shown in the recent years that they come on strong. The last month of the season, last 5 weeks, they usually playing well, but they may dig themselves a big hole here. If they lose this game, I think they could have a very troublesome and problematic season.
Well, they're fortunate to be in a division with teams that can't seem to play or get out of their own way, and that helps. I mean, Dallas.
That is true. I mean, the Cowboys the other night really did not impress me. They hung in there. I mean, it was amazing that they had the lead at certain points. You and I are, I don't believe, big Mike McCarthy fans. I mean, they can talk all they want about the offensive pass interference, whether it was or it wasn't. But again, you got to go back early fourth quarter. I mean, he went for it on 4th and 3, and they threw a pass that was shy of the marker. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, first of all, to me, it's crazy to go for it there. I mean, you tied the game up with 11 minutes to go and give yourself a better shot. So McCarthy is a bit of a liability, I think, on the sidelines. And like you said, you got a couple of teams in that division. I mean, the Giants gave us the old college try last night, but they're going to have to grow with Daniel Jones. He threw that terrible interception after a 19-play march down the field. So it's not a strong division, you're right. And who knows? Maybe this Washington football team, maybe they can crank out 9 wins this year. It's possible. I mean, if they can hold their own in their division, who knows? Maybe they can sneak through there and make this a big story for Ron Rivera in his first year there.
Well, Ron's a good coach. He's always been a solid guy. I know he's got some health issues and stuff, and he's a new coach with a new team, but he's been around a long time. I want to know, in what world is Dak Prescott worth the same kind of money as Russell Wilson? In what world does he come up with that?
Yeah, I don't get that. I mean, I'm really a little tired of hearing a lot of people over time saying he's worth the money, I'm like, I give him credit for a couple of things. One, he stays healthy. He plays every down for the Cowboys, and that means something in a league where a lot of quarterbacks, let's face it, probably half the league's quarterbacks go down at some point during the year, and he's always playing. But I don't want to say that he's not a winner, but he's not a championship-type player. He doesn't always make the right decisions. He doesn't always spot the receiver when it's... I mean, they showed a lot of highlights from the end zone the other day, and a couple of times he had his receivers, Gallup and Amari Cooper, breaking open, and he just hesitates. I mean, to me, a veteran quarterback, boom, you zing the ball to him, you get the yards after catch, and you go from there. He doesn't spot the guys lots of times when it's advantageous for them. I mean, make a 20-yard play. Don't dink it off at the last second to your tight end for 3 yards. But I'm not a big Prescott lover, and I'm with you, Jim. I mean, Russell Wilson is... I saw that he was listed as 8-1 to win MVP this year, and then I heard that he's never even gotten an MVP vote in this league.
It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen. This guy's been around 8 years. He's been in several Super Bowls. He's amazing, and he's never had a vote.
Think about it. He's going to be a first ballot Hall of Famer down the road, down the line, and he might wind up not only not winning MVP, who knows if he gets the vote? I don't understand that. I mean, just like I said about Prescott, I give him credit because he's always under center. He never misses time. Well, Russell Wilson plays with more abandon, maybe less than he did when he was a second or third-year quarterback in this league, but Russell Wilson plays with more, abandon than anyone, and he never gets hurt. And, I mean, look at his stat line from the other day. I mean, he completed almost every pass he threw. He's an incredible player. And, I don't know. I don't know what universe where Prescott gets more money than Russell Wilson. But I'm really getting a little tired of hearing about the whole Prescott.
Well, that's the whole Dallas Cowboy thing, bigger than life. Jerry Jones, most expensive franchise. If Russell Wilson was on Dallas, they'd be building monuments to him. But he's hidden out in the Northwest, and people don't think about that team up in the Northwest, but they're pretty damn good, and they just show up. I mean, that is a tough division out there in the West. They got 4 teams in that division that are going to be really tough, which is why I don't think the Rams are going to have that great a year, because those other 3 teams in that division are really tough.
They are. I mean, and Arizona showed a lot of grit the other day winning that game in San Francisco. But I don't know. You know what? I thought at the start of this year that you could lump together Seattle, the Rams, and the 49ers. And, so, I could see a couple of 10-win teams, and Arizona being maybe a 500-type team. So it is. It's a very tough division. It's got some it really has some great young talent on it. I mean, Seattle, when you think about it, they've changed over their whole defense. And their defense wasn't great the other day, but they had a nice big lead on the Falcons and everything. And they've changed over that whole Legion of Doom over the course of the last 3 years. And they're still good. They're still quick. And Pete Carroll, if he can do anything, he can coach them up on defense. So they're going to be tough all year. And I think we see with Arizona, I mean, let's face it, they certainly showed that they were going to use DeAndre Hopkins as much as they could. I mean, every other time you turned around, he was catching a pass. And the Houston fans back home were, still kicking at Bill O'Brien for trading him. But Arizona's going to be tough all year. I think the Rams are going to be better. The 49ers, that was a rough spot, and they still have to get Garoppolo to make some more clutch plays and everything. And they've got to get George Kittle healthy. He was a non-factor the other day with only 4 catches. But I could see 2 or 3 teams in that division coming out with 10 wins and a mad scramble for first place and all the seeding this year.
Well, let's go to a different division and look at the next game. Carolina at Tampa. Of course, the big story last week was the 2 40-year-olds, Drew Brees and Tom Brady. And, quite frankly, I wasn't impressed with either one. I thought that Tampa Bay... the one thing amazing about Tom Brady is he spent all this time with Belichick and the discipline that the Patriots have, which is probably more discipline than any other team in the league. Now he goes to kind of a loosey-goosey franchise. Arians is a good coach, but he's not Belichick. Their system down there, it showed, I thought, in the game that the discipline that Brady is used to from the Patriots is not going to be present with the Tampa Bay Bucks. And as far as Carolina, Carolina could have won that game. I mean, I thought the Raiders looked pretty decent. Carolina made a couple conservative play calls I didn't like, but they have a nucleus. They got a great running back. The quarterback, Bridgewater, is decent. He could be really good. He might be a little cautious, a little conservative. And they got a new head coach, and they got some assistant coaches that are new. So they got a lot to learn. They're going down to Tampa this week. What did you think of those 2 teams coming off last week?
Well, I'll tell you one thing with Brady and Tampa the other day. I think I kind of think they were trying to please too many people. He wanted to really mix it up. I don't think he ever got really comfortable for the most part. I mean, he had the game opening drive where he scored on the quarterback sneak, and they looked pretty smooth, but they didn't look like a smooth operation the rest of the way. Now, I know that Mike Evans, the star wide receiver, had some hamstring issues heading into the game, and he did play. I mean, so I'll give him a check mark for suiting up and playing, but he was a total non-factor. I mean, he caught a 2-yard touchdown at the end. But I don't think Brady ever got in sync with Evans, and if he doesn't, I mean, maybe eventually he will, but if he doesn't, it's going to be a problem because he's got to be the guy you go to a lot of times, especially in the red zone. Chuck it up there. That guy's about 6'7". Get him the ball. I thought for the most part that the Bucs tried to do too many things. They tried to please guys. They tried to mix the ball around. And, I mean, we've seen Brady in his heyday. He likes to throw to his tight end. Okay, Gronkowski was really a non-factor in this game. He likes to throw to his slot guy a lot. I think they got to get him in a better working rhythm, and maybe it'll happen. And I mean, I see the numbers bumped up, and they're laying 9.5 here. So, the odds makers, it's expected that they're going to, cruise a bit here. But they've got to show me a little bit of a better smooth operation. And I'm with you with Arians. I like him, but I think over the years he's gotten a little too much credit. Everyone, thinks he's so creative and whatever. But I don't know if his team's win enough, I mean, he had a couple years in Arizona that was fine. But, I want to see now he's got this 43-year-old quarterback. You figure Brady's going to regress a little bit. But he's got a lot of weapons. In Tampa Bay, okay, they scored 23 points. The last touchdown really didn't matter. I mean, that team, I know it's early, but that team's got to be scoring 30-plus points every game. That's all there is to it.
Well,
Carolina,
we do have to give we do have to give the opponent a little credit. The Saints are actually, one of the favorites to win and get to the Super Bowl and maybe win the Super Bowl. They're a very good team with a great quarterback, great coaching. So, I guess we have to give them a little credit because that's a tough team to play against in your first game, especially without the OTAs and the preseason and everything else.
No, you're right. And I'll tell you one thing I liked about the Saints defense. I mean, there were some teams that did not tackle great this week, which did not surprise me after no preseason. But the Saints, they stuck guys. I mean, they were pretty physical. They were pretty quick to the ball. So you're right, Jim. They're a defense that's a little bit better than they are given credit for. And they probably did a few things that confused both Brady and the Bucs. But generally speaking, I'm saying like in this game here in week 2 where the Bucs are hosting Carolina, I mean, not to put just a specific point total down, but to me, the Bucs have to score 34, 35 points or more in this game. I mean, the Carolina defense without Keith Lee, who retired after all his concussions, I mean, they've got some real weaknesses. Their cornerbacks can be exposed. It's going to be a long haul for Carolina and Coach Rule. I mean, he's got a contract that pays him until who knows when. He's going to, sounds like he's going to be there forever. But they gotta crawl before they walk with Carolina. I agree with you. I like Bridgewater. I'd like to, I kind of like to root for him to have a decent year with all the injuries he has in the past. And they're going to squeeze everything they can out of Christian McCaffrey. But they got a lot of holes, and both their offensive and defensive line have a ways to go. I'm sure it'll improve. Rule, as a college coach, his teams got better as the season went along, played more crisply. I know in his time at Baylor they got better. I'm sure that's going to happen, but right now I think in this game at least, and what we're talking about week 2, I think Carolina's pretty much over their heads in this spot. I would expect Brady and company, like I said, to put up 35 points, and then you got to figure that's good enough to cover a 9.5 point number.
Well, I'm going to move on to Denver and Pittsburgh. Both played last night. Denver's traveling to Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh handled the Giants. Denver got a little lucky to cover. That worked for me because I had Denver, and I did cover it. But I think I was a little fortunate. Missed all those field goals and extra points. Made a big difference. And I sent a Christmas card to Goskowski this morning for that. Denver is at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh opened 6.5. It's now 7.5. And Ben came off an injury year. He didn't play much last year, and Broncos have the new quarterback, and Vic Fangio is he's just one of those guys that probably shouldn't be a head coach, more of a position coach, or but some of the stuff that he does is just marginal. Anyway, we got to go quickly because we'll never make it through this.
Right.
Denver.
Yeah, no, I'm with you with Vic Fangio. I mean, it makes no sense, and I know he's been criticized far and wide today over, ending the game last night with 2 timeouts in his pocket. Made no sense. Coaches don't adjust. A lot of coaches, at least the bad ones, don't adjust. And with a minute 20-something, once Tennessee was in field goal range, he had to use his timeouts on defense. He didn't do it. It made no sense. He's a total liability as a head coach. I agree with you, Jim. He should be a defensive coordinator for his whole life. He was a good, solid one for years with the Bears. He's not a head coach. And he's already cost the Broncos a game because, let's face it, that was gifted to him with all those missed field goals by Goskowski. And as far as Big Ben goes, as expected, a slowish start. He hadn't played in, I think they said 364 days. So, I mean, you knew he had to shake some rust off. I think he played a little on the conservative side. I think the Steelers have a little worrying to do about their about Connor, the running back, but on the other hand, the kid from Kentucky, Snell, was great. I mean, bouncing up, had almost 20 carries, 113 yards. So they might have found a future star, but this Connor kid may not be, he's just too injury prone. But basically, overall, the Steelers have a lot of defensive strengths. I know they let the Giants push him down the field that one drive that we talked about, but a lot of defensive speed, a lot of turnover type of guys. Steelers are going to be tough in this spot. Obviously, Broncos traveling off that Monday night game. Big advantage to the Steelers here.
Atlanta goes to the Cowboys. Both teams lose last week. Atlanta was a victim of Russell Wilson and his 31 of 35 passing, and that game was never really in doubt. Dallas, of course, was in doubt that with the Rams, and they held in there. We talked about Dak, so we don't have to talk too much about him. But Atlanta, it's funny, Atlanta's been a disappointment since that halftime lead in the Super Bowl. They've really never got their stuff together after that.
No, and what you saw last week against Seattle is kind of what happened all last year, early in the year. You and I used to talk about it on these podcasts. The Falcons found themselves down like 14-0, 10-0. Every time you turned around, they were in a double-digit hole last year. Now they climbed back and covered some numbers second half of the year. But boy, this team has a slow starting nature to it, and that could be a problem here. But I tell you, I think the number looks a little short. I don't know. Sometimes I get a little suspicious of numbers, and when I wound up seeing, well, right now the number I see is Cowboys 4.5. That seems a little light to me. The expression I like to use, Jim, is that they're begging you to bet the Cowboys here. That right now, if that number stays around 4.5, 5. It's like it looks cheap to play the Cowboys, and that kind of raises my antenna. I tell you one thing about the Falcons: they give up a lot of points, but boy, they've got a lot of weapons. Ryan threw for 450 and 2 touchdowns the other day. He's got more than just Julio Jones at his disposal. I think that possibly looks like upset alert time here in Dallas come week 2 on Sunday.
Well, the line move is actually pretty impressive to me. The game opened 6 pretty solidly, and now I'm seeing only a couple of 5s left, and like you said, 4.5s are predominant. So that kind of money, I mean, you're not going to get much public money at this time of the week. So that's pretty sharp money coming in there and say, hey, Dallas came into the season all hyped up, but maybe they're not that good. So
yeah, and let's face it, some injuries that the Cowboys suffered, and all teams had some injuries, but losing Van Der Esch already, I mean, he's a big part of the team. And I'll tell you, their linebackers did not look great the other day. They were caught out of position a few times. The Rams ran a lot of misdirection, and the Cowboy linebackers were overrunning things, I noticed. So maybe this going to be trouble in paradise for Jerry Jones and company this year. Who knows? They lose this game 0-2 out of the gate, and they might be... They might be on a slippery slope. I know it's early, but you don't want to be getting out 0-2, 0-3. It's, you're digging out of a hole the whole time then.
And we got the 49ers and the Jets. I mean, Jets are probably, I don't know, maybe they're right at the bottom as being one of the worst teams in football. I mean, Gaze is just not a good head coach, in my opinion. And the 49ers coming off the Super Bowl loss, of course, we know that people talk about the Super Bowl hangover. It's kind of a jinx for the losing team, and they did lose last week, and now they're going on the road. They opened 6. 49ers are 7 at the Jets. The Jets are unimpressive last week, and I kind of feel sorry for Sam Darnold. I think he has potential, but I think he has a bad coach.
I would agree with you, but I'll tell you what, Sam Darnold has to take some of the blame, too. This is his 3rd year. I watched a lot of this game. He was awful, Jim. I mean, his decision-making is terrible. He's not progressing at all. Now, granted, he's working behind an offensive line that is completely brand new. One starter from last year, a guard named Alex Lewis, is back. Otherwise, this is a whole new operation in front of him. And their receiving core, honestly, even if you were in New York City, you couldn't pick these guys out of a lineup. I mean, nobody knows who. They don't have any talent. They don't. I mean, when I rate the 32 teams before the start of the season, I said to myself, the Jets have to be 30 or 31 or 32 on the talent scale. They don't have much talent. And somebody made a good point on a New York sports talk show yesterday. Their drafting in the last 7 to 10 years is got to be the worst ever. I mean, they don't even have anybody from the draft from 4 years ago on the team. Not one guy. They had, I think, 11 draft picks. I mean, it's awful. And Darnold, obviously, they traded up a couple of years ago, got him in the number 3 spot. He's been a disappointment. They drafted the Alabama kid at defensive tackle last year, Quinnen Williams. You know what he did the other day on 3rd and 4? He jumped off sides to keep a Bills drive going. They're not. They don't have much talent, and you're 100% right. Adam Gase is not the right guy. I thought he might be. I was against the grain. Most New York people here did not want to see him as a coach. I thought a guy with a couple of years head coaching experience in Miami, he'd come here and be okay. He's overwhelmed, and he doesn't. And he's a very prickly type of guy. I mean, he's not gotten along with Le'Veon Bell since day one. He didn't want Le'Veon Bell on the team. He actually put him back on the field the other day after Bell hurt his hamstring, and then Bell had to remove himself. So you wonder, was he trying to hurt his potentially star running back? The Jets are a brutally bad team. This is a bad matchup here. Obviously, the Niners got to travel back to the East Coast, but they're coming off a loss. They seemed, from their quotes after the game, they were angry. I mean, like you said, there's Super Bowl hangover teams, but the Niners were angry, losing a home divisional game. And I tell you what, if their pass rush can get past this wobbly Jets offensive line, Darnold's going to be seeing ghosts again. He's going to get sacked 6, 7 times here easily. And the Jets are really in for a bad, bad season. There's no way out unless, unless somebody steps to the front here and saves them. And they just don't have it. They're just a bad group. They don't have a pass rusher. Their secondary has a star player in May, but they traded away Jamal Adams in the offseason, and they're just a bad team. They just lack talent, and the arrow is pointing down on this team that hasn't made the playoffs in 10 years.
Now we go to the Bills and Dolphins. The Bills did win. They beat the Jets, and the Dolphins lost to the Patriots in Cam Newton's debut there. Anything you want to talk about this? I mean, Miami looked kind of out of it, but they were close to covering. They could have possibly covered if it wasn't for a Fitzmagic interception at the end. The Bills looked like we thought the Bills would look.
I'm sorry, Jim. The Bills looked sharp. Again, it was against the Jets, but the Bills better secure the football a little bit better. The quarterback, Josh Allen, who I like a lot, very sloppy, a couple of fumbles in the Jet red zone. That score was the most misleading score, I think, of the weekend. The Bills really should have won this game by 24 to 31 points. But Allen had a couple of fumbles on runs. And let's face it, the Dolphins just faced Cam Newton. He tucked the ball away 15 times. So they're going to get a lot of that same, that's going to be on the menu here. A lot of Josh Allen runs, and we'll see if the Dolphins can slow him down, maybe force a couple of turnovers. Who knows? They might be able to pull the upset if they can force 2 or 3 miscues here.
Moving on down to the Vikings against the Colts. Both super disappointing games last week. What was the story with Kirk Cousins? 5 passes in the first half?
Really a strange... I tell you, the Vikings are a strange team, Jim. They really didn't re-sign very many defensive players. I believe they've got 6 or 7 new defensive starters this year. Like we said, we like the Packers for Vegas Sportsmaster last week, and they were a relatively easy win. And Kirk Cousins, I mean, again, you scratch your head with him. I don't know why they ever signed him for what they did. He's never proven to be a winning-type player. He's got his moments, but they're a strange bunch. I mean, going into this year, I was telling a buddy this summer, I said, the Vikings are one of the best spread teams in the last 5-6 years under Mike Zimmer. People can check it out. I mean, they're consistently a strong point spread team. But this year, I could see them being a double-digit point spread losing team. If they're asking Cousins to rescue them, they're going to be in a lot of trouble this year.
And the Colts really have a problem. They got turnover Rivers, who turned the ball over the last couple of years with the Chargers, and he goes down to Jacksonville, who really is not a great team by any stretch, with a total wins over and under 4.5 on the year, and they go down to Jacksonville and almost a double-digit favorite, and they lose the game straight up, and Rivers looked like he always looks.
Yeah. No, Rivers showed a lot of it. We used to talk about that last year on some of our shows here, Jim. We said, we wondered aloud, is he shot? I mean, he would throw some just god-awful interceptions. And let's face it, not only did they lose this game, like you said, they were a hefty favorite, a divisional game, but they lost their running back, Marlon Mack, for the season, too. He got hurt. If people saw it on the highlights, or maybe they saw it live, a non-contact injury, Achilles-type injury. And that's a big blow. I mean, that's a guy that probably would have touched the ball 22 to 25 times a game for the Colts this year, and that's out the window. And they've got some real concerns. I mean, starting with, is Phillip Rivers the right guy here? I mean, they pushed aside Jacoby Brissett, who I'm not saying was, Brett Favre, but he was adequate. But now you brought Rivers in, and it's the same old stuff. I mean, we saw it with the Chargers the last 2 years. Every game the Chargers used to play, there was Rivers trying to pull out a game at the end or getting intercepted at the end. And it looks like that whole theatrics is back here now that he's wearing a Colt uniform. And, I like the Colts as a team. They're a nice young team. They got a great offensive line. I like their coach, Frank Reich. But you can't be losing games like this. I mean, sooner or later, Rivers is, passes that kind of wobble out there sometimes, they're going to catch up to you. So the Colts are, they're in a must-win spot right out of the gate, and that's a tough place to be with a 38-year-old quarterback who may or may not be shot.
That's true. And now we're going to get to pick on another head coach. The Lions, Matt Patricia, came out of the Patriotville up there under Bill Belichick, and he has really not done very well for the Lions, and I really got to question what he's doing. And then he's going up against Green Bay, and Aaron Rodgers was, well, I know he was red hot last week. You'd say he was hotter than anybody, but then you look at Russell Wilson. So I would say he was number 2 in the week in being red hot, and now he's going to play the Lions. I mean, the Lions are decent. They got Stafford is decent. They had the lead. They had the Bears down, and they just, I don't know what Patricia's doing in the decisions he makes.
I'm with you. I mean, it was brutal. The Bears scored, the only 21 points scored in the fourth quarter. The Bears scored it. But, you do have to look at one thing, and I'm not going to defend Matt Patricia. I thought he would be a good head coach. He has not proven to be a good head coach in this league. But let's face it, Stafford threw to a wide-open DeAndre Swift. He catches that ball, it's a touchdown, and the Lions win. I mean, the kid drops it, just an off. I mean, he looked like on the replay that he was looking to see that he had to run. One of these times where, a receiver or running back is looking to do two things at once, catch the ball and look upfield. He didn't have any place to run. If he catches the ball, he's in the end zone. It's a touchdown. He takes his eye off the ball. Matt Stafford looked like he was shocked. Obviously he was, and that's just a terrible loss. But you know what? We've seen this from the Lions, and they've got some talent this year. They certainly boned up the defense with some more New England cast off. But I don't know. I don't know when it ever turns around for them. And there seems to be a lot more hope for them this year. A lot of people were talking them up, maybe at least a winning season. But boy, that's one brutal loss. I don't remember looking at an NFL line score in a long time and seeing one team score the last 21 points in the fourth quarter and the home team blowing a big lead like that. I mean, sometimes those losses, they stick with you for a whole year. I mean, if the Lions are going to have anything to smile about, they did get 93 yards rushing from Adrian Peterson, and maybe they'll have a little bit more balance to their offense, but boy, what a tough way to get out of the gate. Patricia deserves a lot of blame, but that DeAndre Swift dropping that pass, boy, he could not have slept very well on Sunday night.
He probably slept as well as Gutowski did, except for that last field goal. The Giants go to the Bears. The Giants, I don't know what you say about them. I don't like either one of these teams. I know the Bears came back and won. We just talked about that. But I'm not impressed with them. But granted, they're better than the Giants. They're more put together than the Giants. But these two teams are not going anywhere this year. You see anything in that game that stands out to you want to talk about?
Well, I'll tell you what, normally, and we talked about the Broncos are traveling off of Monday night, and the Giants, same situation. I tell you, I'm not a Giant fan, but I picked out certain things last night that they should be happy about. Obviously, the interception that Daniel Jones threw while being chased, the ball that was intercepted in the end zone, it was a killer. I mean, it was the whole game turned around on that play. But I tell you what, Daniel Jones has an arm, and he's going to be a player in this league. And I think the Giants are dangerous here in this Week 2 game. I mean, I didn't get any real feel for new coach Joe Judge. I mean, I think he was fairly aggressive. You know, he had his offensive coordinator, obviously, is Jason Garrett. They were pretty aggressive. They certainly have to be worried about the ground game. They just didn't open up any holes for Saquon Barkley, who was very frustrated at the end of that night. But I tell you what, I saw some little glimmers of hope with Daniel Jones. I mean, I told this to people that I know who are in the business. I said, listen, if I was starting a team and they gave me a choice of either Sam Darnold on the Jets or Daniel Jones on the Giants, I would take Daniel Jones 7 days a week. I think he's going to be a good player in this league. And I think the Bears, such an emotional win. I wonder. I know they're playing their home opener here, but I tell you what, the points might be inviting in this game.
Well, and that's what's happening. I'm seeing sixes, but the dog is, you're paying extra juice, and I'm seeing some 5.5 point up. So the Giants are getting some money in this game. Moving on to the next game, the Jaguars' shocking win over the Colts last week. Gardner Minshew, nobody even knows who this guy is. He wears the bandana. But I'm going to tell you something. This kid can play. He's gutty. He plays hard. The guy can play. And I know the Jaguars are supposed to be dumping. Obviously, the players weren't told that. So, and now they're going against the Titans. This is a division game. The Titans, they should have won bigger. Now they're traveling, back home off of a Monday game. That gives the Jags one extra day of rest. They're both winners, and this is a big division game.
I'll tell you what, the Jaguars are a funny team. Like you said, all the talk in the summer was they're going to be a 2-win team. They're going to get Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback out of Clemson. And it's like Minshew, who's, like an old swashbuckling player with that silly mustache and everything. I mean, he completes 19 and 20 passes, doesn't throw a pick. I mean, he was, for people who are into the fantasy stuff, he was one of the better fantasy quarterbacks of the weekend. And I mean, it's funny. It's like he's sabotaging his whole organization's plans to get a different quarterback in the future. You know what? Maybe he is the quarterback of the future for them. And I think they're going to be a little fun team here. And I'll tell you one thing. Tennessee is not what we would call a margin team. I mean, I like Mike Vrabel as a coach, but God, every time you look around from recent years, their games are always going down to the last 2 minutes on a goal line stand or a field goal. So you know what? People out there, play the Titans at your own peril here, because you're asking them to cover a big number. They're not that kind of team. They're a ball control team, and you got a Jacksonville team that, heck, I think they're just looking to have a little fun here. And let's face it, Minshew is not going to go 19 of 20 every Sunday, but he's dangerous, and he's dangerous on the run. And so when Tennessee collapses the pocket a couple of times here, watch out. This guy can make some plays. So mark down Jacksonville as a potential threat here at this price. I think it's a little hefty on the Tennessee side.
Now we got Washington Football Team, which is a strange name, of course. They couldn't figure out a name better than that. Against the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals beat the 49ers. Washington is at the top of the NFC East. 1-0 after beating Philadelphia Eagles. And you know what? They could actually stay there. If Dallas doesn't come back and Philly don't come back, you can actually still have them there at the end of this week. But they're going to have to go down to Arizona and maybe win a game down there too. It's possible. I mean, they got that front four. I mean, that defense is tough, and they're going to have trouble catching up with the Arizona quarterback. He's very mobile, and I don't know that they're a margin team. I don't know that you could sit there and lay 7 points with them. What did you think about last week?
I like the Cardinals. They're on the uptick and everything, and obviously Murray's he's just dangerous at all times. I mean, he really confounded San Francisco on a couple of runs. I mean, they were like grabbing at him and missing him, and he's a pain in the neck to play against. And I'm sure the Redskins are going to just figure, hey, let's keep him in front of us when he does run the ball. Let's not let him bust 20-yard gains. But I'm looking at the other side. I mean, how about the fact that Dwayne Haskins, who last year came in about week 3, week 4, never showed anything, was among the league's worst quarterbacks statistically, given like a halftime speech to his team, and they actually rallied behind it and everything. I mean, they scored, they outscored the Eagles 20-0 in the second half, and Haskins actually played decently. And like you said, I won't call them their old nickname, but the Washington football team, boy, I tell you what, the defense, they sacked Wentz 8 times. They really gave him a beating, and this Arizona offensive line's good, but they're not great. They may cave things in for Murray a little bit here. Interesting game. You're right. Washington could lose and still be sitting on top of the division at the end of the day. I think, in fact, if I had to say right now, I'd go out on a limb and say the Cowboys, Eagles, and Giants. You know what? I think the Giants might win, but I think the Cowboys and Eagles might wind up going 0-2 heading into week 3, and won't that look funny in the standings? But let's face it, Murray's a tough guy to defend, but the Washington team, they're going to do what they can to not let him beat him with, they'll let him throw his passes. He's going to throw to Hopkins, Fitzgerald, and whatnot. They don't want him to beat him with the legs. A lot of these young quarterbacks are beating teams, making big third down plays with the legs. That's going to be Washington's major mission here. Keep Murray under wraps. Don't let him have any, 25, 30-yard runs against him here.
Next game, Ravens against Texans. You talk about guys that can actually run and pass. 2 very good quarterbacks. The Baltimore Ravens, of course, easy win over Cleveland. Houston ran again. They have a little extra rest coming into this week because they played the previous Thursday night. They opened the season against the Super Bowl champs and got wiped out. Bill O'Brien against Harbaugh. To me, I'm not an O'Brien fan. I know you look at his record; he keeps winning that division, but I don't know. Maybe it's because he's in that division, but I've never been a fan. I don't understand the Hopkins thing, but I don't know what they're doing there. They did extend their own quarterback, Watson, and of course you got two very good quarterbacks in this game. It looks like the Ravens are going to be 7-point favorite in this spot.
Yeah, I'll tell you one thing. Like I said, Houston's got some extra time after losing that Thursday night game 34-20 at Kansas City. Think back, though, to that game, Jim. The Texans went down the field, scored right away, looked like they had a semblance of balance, offense, and everything. But they've got to be a little afraid defensively. I mean, the little rookie running back, Edwards-Helaire, ran for 138 yards, really just banged out big gainer after big gainer against them. And Houston's defensive front they might not be able to hold up here. Now, last year these teams played, and for whatever reason, I loved Houston, and the game was over by halftime. I got squashed, and I'm not going to make that same mistake and think that Houston's going to hang with them here. I think Houston's defensive line is not very good. Their linebacking core is taking a fall off. So with the front seven on defense probably getting pushed around and not being able to wrap up Lamar Jackson, I would not be shocked to see another lopsided game here. You're right with Harbaugh. To me, he's one of the top 3 to 4 head coaches in this league. Always has been. And I'll tell you one thing about his teams: they don't take anybody for granted. They go out, they do their job, they beat you up, they get their starters off the field, and they move on to the next one. Right here, tall task for the Texans. Like I said, the main thing here is Baltimore's offensive line, even with the retirement of Marshall Yonder, who was one of the great offensive linemen in this league, they're still good. They're still strong. Their tackles are good, and I think they're going to push Houston around a little bit here.
Yeah, it's difficult to lay big points on the road, but I know there's no fans in the stands, and home field may not matter much. But Houston came off playing a very tough team, the toughest actually, the Chiefs, and the Ravens played Cleveland, which tells you right there they're both coming off very different experiences from the previous week. It's a tough game to not overreact to it. The Chiefs are at the Chargers, and you talk about. I know the Chargers got away with it, but they're just not impressive. And now they're going to play the best team in football, the Chiefs.
Yeah, the Chargers, like you said, they were lucky to get out alive the other day against the Bengals. I don't know really what to say about the Chargers. I just think they're an average-type team. I think the coach is okay. I think he's a C-plus or a B type of coach. But, again, you're going against the best team in football right now, a prolific offense, and now they've added an important piece to that offense, as I just said, with the kid from LSU, Edwards-Helaire. They're impossible to deal with. I mean, I'll tell you the truth. If the Kansas City receiver, I believe it was Robinson, didn't drop 2 or 3 passes early in the game, they would have scored in the 40s in this opener against the Texans. The Chiefs are just loaded. The only thing is, keeping Patrick Mahomes in upright position. Remember last year he got banged around early to middle of the season a little bit. You know what? Their offensive line is still strong, even though they had a couple of off-season defections. The Chiefs are the real deal. I mean, I hate usually picking teams to repeat. Not that anyone's listening to my picks, but I thought going into the season the Chiefs just made all the sense in the world as a repeat. Obviously, we're early in the season here, but this is a team that is probably going to score, average, I would think, in the low to mid-30s in every game they play this year. And, the Chargers have some pass rushes and everything, but I don't know what else they have. I mean, they've got decent safety play, but boy, I could see the Chiefs controlling the ball here, for 40 minutes of this game and just wearing down the Chargers. Tough spot to open up their part of the SoFi Stadium. The Rams christened it the other night. The Chargers get their first game here, but we see this is a big number. I don't know what you're seeing now, Jim, but I'm seeing Chiefs 8.5, and
that's
a
a
big
number.
price, but it's not an inviting price to me to grab the bolts in this spot.
I agree. The Patriots at the Seahawks, or should I say Cam Newton against Russell Wilson. And Seahawks and Russell are a 4-point favorite in this game. This is our Sunday night game, and this is going to be a good one.
I'm looking forward to this one, Jim. I'm sorry. This is a real fun matchup. I don't know what I'm looking forward to more. Watch Newton play or what he wears in the post-game press conference.
I want to ask you this. Is there any chance you would ever wear one of those outfits?
I'm wearing one right now. A canary yellow suit and a big fedora. So.
Yeah, right. Of course.
You can picture it.
Yeah.
I tell you, I really like Cam Newton. I mean, you know what? He sat tight this summer. He finally got an offer. He went to a team, and I'm going by what Bill Belichick said the other day. He said he's been nothing but the best teammate for everybody since he signed. They love him. I mean, you saw him after he scored one of his touchdowns that day, handed the ball to a lineman, Andrews, who missed all of last year. He told him to spike it. I mean, they're having fun, and that's what I think this game's going to be a fun spot. You don't often get Belichick plus points. People can look it up. It hasn't happened a whole lot in the last, say, 10 years. And you got a Seattle team, like you said, you don't have any crowd, so you don't have the whole 12th man flavor, but you got a Seattle team that, listen, they're a swashbuckling team with Russell Wilson. They have a lot of weapons. They really love how this receiver Metcalf has come on. Big touchdown the other day, 95 yards receiving. This is going to be high octane football. The question I have is, and we've talked about this in past years, how many hits can a quarterback take? Newton ran the ball 15 times the other day. Is that going to be the steady diet that he gets, or does Belichick and Josh McDaniels, his offensive coordinator, have to say, listen, we got to peel back a little bit. He shouldn't be running more than, say, 7 or 8 times. So we're going to see what happens here. Really a fun spot, probably the best game on the board.
Yeah, definitely.
And I'll tell you what, if they're giving Seattle, 3 points for home field, again, without the crowd there, I wonder if it's worth that much. But anyway, very competitive game. I don't want to say flip of the coin, but I'll tell you one thing. If you tell me right now that Newton starts connecting here with Edelman and his wideouts on some deeper throws, I think the Patriots could be live right here.
Well, there's no question. He's a Super Bowl player too, and Belichick, of course, is Belichick. If this game was on a neutral field, let's say this was a Super Bowl game, and you made Seattle a 2-point favorite, who would you want?
I think I'd want New England.
Okay, we differ.
I think I would take New England. I'll tell you one thing. I will make one prediction that between now and Sunday night, you will see that Russell Wilson pass that was intercepted by Malcolm Butler about 100 times when NBC is promoting this game. I mean, they can't give that to you enough. So you'll be seeing that plenty. And anyway,
I see
Malcolm Butler's nowhere on the Patriots roster, as people know. But anyway, it should be a real fun game.
I see Russell Wilson as the best quarterback in football, and I've said that for probably 4 or 5 years, and I think you remember me saying that in podcast last year. I like Cam Newton. I like his attitude. I like the way he plays. He's obviously a physical specimen, but running the ball in the NFL is not good for your health, and he has always been an inaccurate passer. He's notoriously high on his longer passes, even on the shorter ones. And that was a problem with him in Carolina. He didn't pass the ball that much last week. Didn't have to. But he's going to have to here. You're not going to shut down Russell Wilson in that offense. It's not going to happen. And, the Patriots, they got away with one last week. They played Miami. Didn't play anybody tough. I mean, I'm not going to say Atlanta was tough for Seattle. But, the Patriots had a lot of people opt out. A lot of people gone from that team. Yeah, they didn't have to shut down an offense last week. The offense was non-existent from Miami. So I think Seattle's going to win this game, and I think they're going to win it handily.
I can see that. I'll tell you one thing about Cam Newton, if folks remember. He's always had a reputation when he played all those years for the Panthers. He'd always, like you talk about, throwing high and wide all the time early in games. He'd always struggle in his first, let's say, 2 series, 3 series. He always was so over-amped, or whatever word you want to use. And then his numbers would get better as the game goes along. I wonder here, he could come into this game, be a little over-amped, and throw a couple of, deep balls that get picked off or whatever, and it could put the Patriots in a hole early. I wonder if maybe, knowing that, Belichick and company would be a little more conservative early on, let everybody kind of get their feet wet and go from there. But it's something that I'm just saying, we've all watched so many NFL games over the years, certain things stand out, and that was one, even in his Super Bowl year when he won the MVP before they lost to the Broncos in the Super Bowl, he would have some terrible stats in the first quarter games and then really come on. So something to watch here. I mean, maybe for people out there, who knows, maybe you want to bet the Seahawks in the first half based on that. But I have a little more confidence in the Pats. You're right, they lost a lot of defensive players, guys opting out for COVID, other guys getting traded, other waiver deal moves, whatever. They lost a big chunk of their defense. But you know what? As long as Belichick's calling the shots and they're able to play some really tight red zone defense, I'll give them a real good fighting chance here.
Oh, that's going to be interesting. Of course, the Saints play the Raiders. That's our first home game here in Las Vegas. We now have, and they're 1-0. Both Saints and the Raiders are both 1-0. That's a Monday night game. And unfortunately, we're at 58 minutes, and I can't go beyond that. So that's a real quick one. It should be interesting. Game open 5.5 Saints. It's now up to 6.5. I wouldn't be surprised if you see 7. The Raiders, they did what they did last week against Carolina. Road win. That was a great road win for them. And the Saints, of course, played the Tom Brady Buccaneers, and that was. I can't spend too much time on this because we're out of time. But Joe, thank you very much. Vegas Sports Masters, is that correct? .com?
Yes.
Okay.
VegasSportsMaster.pro. Check it out. Like we said, big weekend last weekend. We plan on having a big NFL and college weekend here. VegasSportsMaster.pro.
.pro, not .com.
Right, that's what I'm saying. .pro.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Joe. We'll talk to you again next week.
All right, Jim. Great to be with you. Bye-bye.